Story 1. Becoming extremely physically and mentally disabled while still being able to remember who you were before the accident. You live like this for 50 years and then die a peaceful death. Story 2. Recently, I had pneumonia and fluid in my lungs. I became very unwell and felt as if I was drowning in my own body. I would take deep breaths, gasping for air, then my lungs would bubble and I would cough up blood while trying to breathe. Having a tube placed down my throat before being sedated is terrifying. I don't remember much about the weeks that followed. However, that last horrifying breath and the bubbles rising in my lungs is one of the most haunting feelings. I would have hated for that to be my last moment alive. I'm sure there are more brutal ways to die. I've been close to death after particularly severe attacks, but that experience felt so different from drowning in my own body. Story 3. Getting skinned alive by the cartel. Periodic injections keep you conscious instead of losing consciousness from shock. This can last for hours. Story 4. Locked-in syndrome occurs when the brain loses the ability to control movement while remaining fully aware and able to see and hear. Although the body cannot move, cognitive functions remain intact, which can lead to the ability to communicate through eye movements, such as using Morse code. Story 5. Choking to death is a frightening experience. I had that near-death experience once. You know you are about to die, and it is hard to stay calm. Story 6. Experiencing a stay at the Toy Box Killer's pleasure has haunted my nightmares since I heard a podcast about him. I am not brave enough to listen to the recordings. The case files are enough. Story 7. I once read about a medieval torture where the victim was tied to a chair, coated in honey and milk, and placed in a tub of the same. They would then be left to be slowly devoured by insects. I would not want to go out like that. Additionally, 8 by Bugs would be a good death metal band name. Story 8. Late stages of bowel cancer and untreated breast cancer are significant issues. Voluntary assisted dying should be legal everywhere due to these difficult circumstances. In the late stages of bowel cancer, a person may experience an obstruction, which prevents them from evacuating their bowels. In the final stages, individuals may be too weak to undergo surgery to remove the obstruction, leaving it unresolved. Even when a person is advised to have nothing by mouth, the body continues to produce approximately 250 grams of waste every 24 hours. This waste has to exit the body somehow, leading to distressing situations. Therefore, voluntary assisted dying is a compassionate option. Story 9. The worst nightmare I've ever had was that I got stuck in a narrow crevice in a cave with my stepson. Imagine a slow and agonizing death while your child suffers the same fate. Story 10. Sliding down a tall mountain made of cheese graters shirtless, belly first, and being grated alive before falling into a pit of lava. Story 11. A huge blast of radiation followed by spending time in a hospital for research purposes. Wendigoon has a video on it, which is haunting. Story 12. You may be facing the challenges of a government that seeks compliance, which could be difficult when it arrives. Story 13. Alzheimer's robs individuals of their personality until the end of their lives, resulting in them becoming a shell of themselves and forgetting who they are. My grandfather had it for the last few years of his life. He began telling us stories about his past that he clearly believed were real, but we knew they weren't. He passed away last summer at the age of 95. He lived a wonderful life, but I would hate for anyone else to experience such an end. Story 14. Burning to death is definitely the worst way to die. Being crushed slowly, starting with the feet and working its way up, would also be terrible, like by a steamroller. Story 15. Picture this. You are 19 years old, and for the past year you have been in the United States Marine Corps. 2 days ago, you landed at Peleliu. Your ears are still ringing from 2 days of sustained combat. You are in your foxhole, clutching your M1 carbine close to your chest, listening for the enemy. You have no clean water. It has all been tainted with oil and fuel. You close your eyes and take a deep breath. It is midnight. For the first time in 48 hours, you feel calm. Maybe I will get through this, you think to yourself. The white noise of gunfire and shell impacts is interrupted by a voice. You die tonight, Marine. Your eyes shoot open and the guns do too. Story 16. Ending up stuck as a cave explorer in a small crack and dying seems pretty awful. Being buried alive does not seem fun either. Story 17. Long, drawn-out deaths, starvation, being buried alive, torture, infection without medical attention, and suffocation. Story 18. Being disabled or becoming incapacitated and spending over 40 years in bed only to die like everyone else does. Story 19. For me, drowning is a fear I have. I am slowly overcoming it, but drowning will always be my biggest fear. Story 20. A herpes infection in the eyes can slowly and painfully follow the optical nerves into the brain, causing a series of strokes that disable parts of the body. Story 21. My mother is a lawyer, and she worked on a case where two individuals harmed their friend in a brutal manner, resulting in his death. Story 22. Dismemberment. The brazen bull is a notable example of a potential myth that is horrific even if only partially true. The brazen bull is an ancient mythical torture device supposedly used by Phalaris, a tyrant who ruled a part of Sicily in the 6th century BCE. It consisted of a life-size bronze bull that was hollow on the inside and had a door on the outside. The torturer would place a victim inside and light a fire under the bull, roasting the victim to death. An acoustic system within the bull transformed the victim's screams into sounds resembling bull noises for those outside. Paralaus, the inventor of the device, believed he would be rewarded for his creation. Instead, Phalaris, disgusted by these words, ordered Paralaus to test the horn sound system by entering the bull himself. Once inside, Paralaus was locked in, and the fire was ignited so Phalaris could hear his screams. Before Paralaus could perish, Phalaris commanded him to be removed from the bull. After freeing him, Phalaris is said to have had Paralaus thrown to his death from a high cliff. Phalaris himself is claimed to have met his end in the brazen bull when he was overthrown by Telemachus, the ancestor of Theron. Story 23. Being in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, it is deflating while a great white shark circles around. I am slowly sinking into the sea and awaiting being torn apart by the shark. Story 24. There is a character in Season 2 of Fargo who gets buried alive, feet first, in what appears to be hot concrete. I think about that scene too often. Story 25. Bear attack. If I had a choice between being burned alive or eaten by a bear, I would choose the fire. They consume you while you are alive piece by piece. You can only hope they sever an artery so you bleed out faster. Story 26. Imagine chilling at a red light. You look over to your passenger seat and see your good boy Max enjoying the ride. Suddenly, you are engulfed in flames. So is Max. Rest in peace, Tina Tinter and Max. Story 27. The Japanese had a method that involved planting bamboo underneath a person. They would then shackle the individual to the ground on their back. Another, faster method was to shackle the person and place a rat cage over their stomach, then remove the base plate. Both methods result in prolonged and horrific deaths. Story 28. Being stabbed to death or drowning is a painful experience. A gunshot is quick, but stabbing is slow and torturous. Drowning is terrifying. You see your life flash before your eyes as your body fills with water until everything goes black. My uncle unfortunately drowned, and when they found him, he had gone from 150 or 175 pounds to 300 pounds due to water filling his body. Story 29. Persian execution method of scaphism. If you are squeamish, do not look it up. Myrthidates, a notable historical example of this method of execution, was said to have survived for 14 days. After 12 hours, you would lose all semblance of time. Probably felt like months. Story 30. I'm not sure how brutal it is, but I think the scariest and most horrific way to die would be like those people who died in super narrow caves, or like the man who got lodged in a store pillar and wasn't found for about 2 years. I am also very claustrophobic. Brutal methods of execution probably include any of the countless ways people were flayed in the past. Story 31. There is a video I saw of a failed suicide by a Russian soldier. Trigger warning. This is graphic. He attempted to kill himself with a grenade. He placed the grenade on his chest, on top of his armor plate. The grenade detonated, resulting in the loss of both his hands and half of his face. Since he lost both hands, he could no longer take his own life. He had to sit and wait for death. That is the most brutal incident I have witnessed. Story 32. I once saw a video where a desperate drug addict forced a police officer to shoot him by running at the officer with a knife. The officer fired about 5 bullets into his chest, and smoke emerged from his mouth as he gasped for air. I can imagine that this is a sick way to die, which I never want to experience. I would prefer a bullet to the brain over that. Story 33. Rabies. Whenever rabies is mentioned, I think about the comment that has been shared many times. It seems absolutely terrifying. Story 34. Many situations sound awful, but none terrifies me like the thought of being attacked by a shark in deep water where I can't reach the bottom. Story 35. High-pressure steam line. The steam can cause severe burns, creating a sensation similar to burning. However, unlike actual fire, your nerve endings do not get damaged immediately, so you continuously feel the burning sensation until the trauma becomes severe enough to be life-threatening. Story 36. Any kind of neurological degenerative disease, such as motor neuron disease, Huntington's disease, and prion disease, can occur randomly or due to some genetic mutation. These diseases are truly frightening. Another fear is being stranded and alone, slowly dying from dehydration, especially if it happens deep underwater or in a cave. Story 37. I knew someone who was driving when a semi-truck lost control and landed right on top of the oncoming car, resulting in an instant death. Story 38. Dying from radiation is one of the longest experiences one can endure with no chance of survival. Story 39. Being eaten by a bear is a frightening experience. They do not attempt to kill you immediately. Instead, they try to immobilize you before consuming you while you are still alive. Story 40. Dying of thirst sounds like one of the worst ways to die. Takes days. Agonizing thirst, pounding headache, closing throat, failing organs, and delirium are all part of the experience. This is similar to being tortured to death. Story 41. The answer is either impalement or being flayed alive, both of which were used as execution methods in history. Drowning, while terrifying, may only involve a few minutes of suffering before losing consciousness. Burning alive is similar but may last slightly longer, perhaps 15 minutes or more. In impalement, a large stake is shoved into the body, leaving the person in a state of agony for days or even weeks. Flaying may take several hours before death occurs due to shock. In both scenarios, the individual may go in and out of consciousness. Story 42. Getting slowly crushed in the back of a garbage truck. The mechanism closes in on you at a rate of 1 inch per hour. Oh no. Story 43. Scaphism chills me just thinking about it. I looked it up once and wish I hadn't. Story 44. I once dreamed that I drowned in a pool of mud. I have never woken up feeling happier to be alive. I know it wasn't real, but it felt like it, and it was truly terrifying. I remember the panic, the struggle, and the eventual acceptance that I would never escape. Then I woke up. Story 45. All of these are bad, but I would say it's asphyxiation. I work in respiratory care, and trust me, dying because you can't get air is terrifying. I've seen patients claw at their throats and bleed from the eyes because their blood vessels are rupturing. You can't move, you can't think, and you are aware of your painful decline. Additionally, this can happen with a much higher chance than most other causes, which I think makes it even more frightening. Story 46. Being pulled apart by some animal, probably dogs, jackals, or hyenas. If I ever feel the urge to watch Django again, I remember that one scene, and then I don't. Story 47. There is a story about 2 men and a woman walking on a city street. The men get into an argument over something trivial. One of them pushes the other, causing him to accidentally fall through a barrier and into a boiling sewer. There was no way to rescue him, and he was slowly boiled to death. Story 48. Being captured by the ancient Persians and sentenced to death by scaphism. Story 49. Being eaten alive by an animal is one of my greatest fears. You can try reasoning with another human who wants to harm you, even if you don't succeed. You cannot do that with an animal. Story 50. Animal attack. Bear, lion, shark, burning alive, drowning, skydiving when the parachute doesn't open, or generally falling from a great height. Story 51. I have watched 2 friends with brain cancer. That is truly awful. If it ever happens to me, I will take action to prevent it before it reaches that point. Story 52. Getting crushed by your own truck while changing the oil can be deadly. I had a close friend who lost his life that way. Story 53. Impending death feels like treading water in the middle of shark-infested waters at night, or experiencing locked-in syndrome, where one cannot move any part of the body except perhaps the eyes. Story 54. Getting stuck in a cave like the man who died going into the birth canal. Story 55. Being steamed alive causes a similar burning pain. However, the steam does not destroy the nerve endings like fire does, so you feel the pain continuously from start to finish, unlike being burned alive. Story 56. Being in a car, seeing a truck speeding and probably not stopping, you know you are about to die. Getting hit, surviving it, bleeding out in the car. Probably one of the most common deaths I fear the most. Story 57. Burning alive has always struck me as being terrible. Being chewed up by a meat grinder would probably not be pleasant either. With a little imagination, almost anyone can come up with horrific, gruesome ways to die, such as being eaten alive by rats, slowly being crushed between 2 giant rollers starting at the feet and working up, or being flayed alive. It is quite terrifying how many truly horrible ways there are to die. Story 58. There is a place in Alaska where the difference between high and low tide is the most extreme on Earth. People have walked out onto what appears to be a beach at low tide, only to find themselves sinking into sticky mud or quicksand and unable to escape. There is no cell signal there. They watch the tide slowly coming in as the sun sets, knowing they will soon drown in the dark. Story 59. Falling off a cliff, getting impaled by a sharp rock, and being left to scream in agony for the next couple of hours until you slowly die. Story 60. For me, the scariest thought would be forgetting everything and everyone I have known and loved. It would be a void of myself until my time comes. My great-grandma experienced something similar. It was not as debilitating, and she still recognized my great-grandpa. But everyone else? No, he was sad. Story 61. I used to work overnight and had a coworker who died in a car accident on the way home from work. I saw on the news that his car caught fire. I could only hope he had died before that happened. Anything involving actually living through what is killing you is just too much for me. Burning alive, drowning, suffocating, and so on. That's the most brutal, in my opinion. Story 62. Dying alone. Imagine you're on your last breath and take a look around. No one is there for your final moments on Earth. Then you think of the people you've met who hold significance in your life, but they're not there. No one, not even a stranger or a medical professional. You begin to feel that you're not worth even a second of someone's time. Even if you're in an accident, just knowing that no one is around, not even an insect, you realize how meaningless life is when it's cut short, begging for anyone to save you. If it's suicide, you already feel that no one is there for you until you take your last breath, watching your desolate room fade to black, hoping for someone to stop you. But there is nothing. Just you, all alone, wishing that whatever comes after will end all of the suffering. Story 63. My old friend is 1 day older than I am. She lacks mental awareness. Dementia has taken her away while she is still alive. Story 64. The most painful method of torture I can think of is rat torture. This form of torture was used during the Dutch Revolt, where a bowl of live rats was placed on a person's naked body, with the open side down against their skin. Then, hot coals were placed on top of the bowl, forcing the rats to seek any means of escape, which, of course, was through the person's body. Story 65. On a sinking ship, I'm being chased by murderers while my family worries about me and fears my body will never be found again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.